The fitting room suddenly felt too small, too confining. I wanted space to appreciate him properly, to take my time exploring this unexpected gift. As if reading my thoughts, Albert pulled back slightly. "Come home with me," he said, his voice rough with want. "Let me finish what we started." I hesitated. This was already more than I'd ever imagined when I'd scheduled a simple dress fitting. Taking it further, leaving with him, would cross a line I hadn't crossed in decades. "Clara?" Ella's voice again, closer this time. "The shop's about to close." Albert and I dressed quickly, efficiently, like teenagers afraid of being caught. The intimate bubble we'd created burst, replaced by the practical need to appear normal, respectable. But as he zipped my dress, his fingers trailing along my spine, I knew normal was the last thing I felt. "Think about it," he murmured in my ear as he opened the curtain. "My address is on the business card." I emerged from the fitting room on unsteady legs, hoping my flushed face could be attributed to the warm afternoon. Ella looked up from a display of vintage buttons, her eyes bright with curiosity. "Well, how did it go?" she asked. "Perfect fit," Albert said smoothly, but when his eyes met mine, the double meaning was clear. Just a few minor alterations needed. "Clara can pick it up Friday." As we gathered our things and prepared to leave, Albert walked us to the door. His hand brushed mine as he held it open, a touch so brief it could have been accidental. But the way his fingers lingered, the warmth that passed between us, left no doubt about his intentions. "Until Friday," he said, pressing his business card into my palm. Outside in the late afternoon heat, Ella linked her arm through mine. "You look different," she observed as we walked toward her car. "Different how? I don't know." "Energized. Like someone just plugged you back in after years of running on batteries." If only she knew how accurate that observation was. The 30 minutes in Albert's fitting room had awakened something in me I'd thought was permanently dormant. Every nerve ending still hummed with awareness. Every breath carried the faint scent of his cologne. "It's probably just excitement about the dress," I said weakly. "It really is beautiful." Ella studied me with the sharp eyes of a woman who'd known me for 30 years. "Mm-hmm. And I suppose that's why you're glowing like a teenager who just got asked to prom?" I laughed, unable to deny the truth in her words. "Maybe I'm just having a good day." "The best kind," she agreed, but I caught her glancing back at the tailor shop with a knowing smile. That evening, alone in my house with only the cats for company, I found myself replaying every moment of the afternoon. Albert's hands on my waist, his lips against my neck, the way he'd looked at me like I was something precious and desirable. The business card sat on my kitchen counter, innocent white paper that somehow felt heavy with possibility. I could call him. Or I could show up at his address tomorrow, claiming I needed another fitting. The thought made my pulse quicken and my skin warm with remembered touches. When was the last time I'd felt this way? This alive, this wanted, this ready for adventure? My marriage had been comfortable but passionless in its final years. Since Harold's death 5 years ago, I'd convinced myself that part of my life was over, that contentment and routine were enough. Albert had shattered that assumption in one afternoon. I poured myself a glass of wine and stepped onto my back patio, where the evening air carried the scent of jasmine and possibility. The stars were just beginning to appear, and I found myself wondering if Albert was looking at the same sky, thinking of me. The phone rang, interrupting my reverie. Ella's name appeared on the caller ID. "Okay," she said without preamble. "Spill. And don't you dare tell me it was just about the dress." I considered playing innocent, but the excitement bubbling inside me demanded release. "You're going to think I've lost my mind." "Probably. Tell me anyway." So I did. I told her about Albert's hands, his kisses, the way he'd made me feel beautiful and desired. I told her about the invitation in his eyes and the business card burning a hole in my counter. When I finished, the line was quiet for so long I wondered if the call had dropped. "Ella? I'm here. I'm just..." She paused. "Impressed. And maybe a little jealous. You think I'm crazy." "I think you're alive," she said firmly. "For the first time in years, you sound completely, utterly alive. The question is, what are you going to do about it?" I looked at the business card again, at the elegant script spelling out Albert's name and address. "I honestly don't know." "Well, you'd better figure it out soon," Ella said with a laugh, "because whatever happened in that fitting room today, it was just the preview. The real question is, are you ready for the main event?" After we hung up, I sat in the gathering darkness, weighing my options. I could play it safe, avoid Albert, pick up my dress on Friday with a polite smile and nothing more. Return to my quiet, predictable life where the most excitement came from a particularly challenging crossword puzzle, or I could take the leap, trust in the connection I'd felt, the desire that had sparked between us like electricity. Embrace the woman Albert had seen in that fitting room, confident, sensual, alive. The decision, when it came, was surprisingly easy. I reached for my phone and dialed the number on the business card. It rang twice before Albert's warm voice answered. "Clara," he said, and I could hear the smile in his voice. "I was hoping you'd call." "Were you?" I asked, settling back in my chair with a smile of my own. "I've been thinking about you all evening, about this afternoon, about that dress, about how perfectly it fit you. And I've been thinking about how much better it would look on my bedroom floor." The boldness of his words sent heat rushing through me. "Albert, too much?" he asked, but I could hear the playful challenge in his voice. "Not nearly enough," I admitted, surprising myself with my honesty. "Then perhaps you'd like to continue this conversation in person? I have a very nice bottle of wine that's been waiting for the right occasion." I looked around my empty house at the safe, solitary life I'd built for myself. Then I thought about Albert's hands, his eyes, the way he'd made me feel like a woman, worth wanting. "Give me your address," I said. "I'll be right over." Some encounters change everything in a single afternoon. They remind you that life still has surprises, that desire doesn't disappear with age. It just waits for the right person to reawaken it. Tell me, have you ever had a moment that completely shifted your perspective? What would you do if someone looked at you the way Albert looked at me? Share your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one. And before you go, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories that prove it's never too late for passion. Thanks for watching. And remember, the best fittings happen when someone truly sees you. I felt his fingers brush against my waist as he adjusted the fabric, his touch lingering just a moment longer than necessary. The mirror reflected both of us, me in the half-finished dress, him behind me with measuring tape draped around his neck like a promise. His eyes met mine in the glass, and something shifted in the air between us. "Perfect fit," he murmured, but I knew he wasn't talking about the dress. His hands traced the seam along my hip, and I felt my breath catch. This wasn't just a fitting anymore. Before we dive deeper, take a quick second to hit that like button and subscribe. It really helps the channel grow, and trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. Now let's continue. I had walked into Albert's tailor shop that Tuesday afternoon, expecting nothing more than a simple dress fitting. At 66, I thought those days of unexpected encounters were behind me. How wrong I was. The bell above. The door chimed as I stepped into the warm, fabric-scented space, sunlight streaming through tall windows onto bolts of silk and wool arranged like a rainbow along the walls. "Clara," Albert's voice was rich, seasoned like fine wine. At 71, he moved with the careful precision of a man who had spent decades perfecting his craft. His silver hair was perfectly styled, his shirt crisp despite the afternoon heat. Right on time, I smoothed my hands over my simple blouse, suddenly conscious of my appearance. "I hope you don't mind, but I brought Ella along for a second opinion." My friend waved from where she was examining a display of vintage buttons, her silver curls catching the light. "Of course not," Albert smiled, gesturing toward the fitting room, "though I have a feeling we won't need any outside opinions today." The fitting room was intimate, enclosed by heavy curtains that muffled the sounds from the street. Albert had prepared everything, the half-finished dress hanging on a padded hanger, pins organized in neat rows, his measuring tools laid out with methodical care. There was something almost ceremonial about it. "I'll step out while you change," he said, but his eyes held mine for a beat too long. "Call when you're ready." Alone behind the curtain, I slipped out of my clothes, my skin tingling with anticipation I hadn't felt in years. The dress was beautiful, deep emerald silk that seemed to flow like water. As I pulled it over my head, the fabric caressed my skin with whisper-soft touches, settling against my curves with perfect intimacy. "Ready," I called, my voice slightly breathless. Albert's reaction when he saw me was worth everything. His eyes widened, then traveled slowly from my face down to where the dress skimmed my thighs. "Clara," he breathed, "you look absolutely stunning." Heat bloomed in my cheeks. It had been so long since a man had looked at me like that, like I was something precious, desirable. "You flatter me." "I never flatter," he said, stepping closer. "I only tell the truth." His hands moved to my shoulders, adjusting the neckline, with professional precision, but I could feel the warmth of his fingers through the thin fabric. Every touch sent little sparks along my skin. When he knelt to check the hem, I looked down at his silver head, fighting the urge to run my fingers through his hair. "Turn for me," he requested, his voice softer now. I pivoted slowly, acutely aware of his gaze following every movement. The dress moved with me like a second skin, the silk whispering against my legs. When I faced him again, something had changed in his expression, a hunger that made my pulse quicken. "The fit is almost perfect," he said, producing his measuring tape. "Just a few adjustments needed." His hands encircled my waist with the tape, and I felt his breath warm against my neck as he leaned close to read the measurement. The professional distance we'd maintained began to dissolve. His fingers traced the line where the dress met my hips, ostensibly checking the fit, but the touch felt electric. "How does it feel?" he asked, his voice low. "Like it was made for me," I whispered back. It was. His hands settled on my waist, not measuring now, just holding. "From the moment you walked in here 3 weeks ago, I've been designing this dress around you. Your curves, your grace, the way you move." My heart hammered against my ribs. "Albert!" "Tell me to stop," he said, his thumbs tracing small circles against the silk. "Tell me this is just business." I should have. Every rational part of my mind screamed that this was inappropriate. I was a client. He was a professional. We were both in our 60s with grown children and complicated histories. But when I looked into his eyes, I saw something I'd been missing for years. Desire, pure and uncomplicated. Instead of pulling away, I stepped closer. "Don't stop." His hands moved with newfound confidence, sliding up my ribcage to rest just below my silhouette. The measuring tape fell forgotten to the floor. Through the thin fabric, I could feel the heat of his palms, the slight tremor that betrayed his own arousal. "You're so beautiful," he murmured, his face inches from mine. "More beautiful than any woman has a right to be." Before I could respond, his lips found mine. The kiss was gentle at first, testing, but when I melted against him, it deepened into something hungry and urgent. His hands tangled in my hair, messing the careful style I'd spent 20 minutes perfecting, and I couldn't bring myself to care. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, I became aware of sounds from the shop. Ella's voice asking about something, the rustle of fabric. Reality crashed back, but Albert's arms around me made it seem distant, unimportant. "We should—" I started. "Clara?" Ella's voice came from just outside the fitting room. "How's it going in there?" Albert and I froze, his hands still on my waist, my lips still tingling from his kiss. The curtain might as well have been made of paper for all the privacy it provided. "Fine," I called back, proud of how steady my voice sounded. "Just making some adjustments." "Take your time," Ella replied. "I'm going to examine those beautiful scarves." Albert's eyes met mine, a silent question in them. I could end this now, smooth my hair, adjust the dress, and pretend nothing had happened. Go back to my safe, predictable life where excitement came from a good book or a particularly successful garden club meeting. Or I could step further into this unexpected adventure. Reached up and traced the line of his jaw with my fingertip. "I think this dress needs more than minor adjustments," I whispered. His smile was pure sin. I couldn't agree more. His hands resumed their exploration, mapping the contours of my body through the silk. Every touch was reverent, appreciative, making me feel like a work of art rather than a woman whose best years were supposedly behind her. When his fingers found the hidden zipper at my back, I didn't protest. The dress pooled at my feet like green water, leaving me standing in only my undergarments and afternoon sunlight. I expected to feel self-conscious. My body wasn't what it had been at 25 or even 45. But the way Albert looked at me like I was a goddess descended from Mount Olympus burned away any insecurity. "Perfect," he breathed, and I believed him. His shirt followed my dress to the floor, revealing a chest that was lean and strong despite his years. When he pulled me against him, skin meeting skin, I gasped at the contact. It had been so long since I'd been held like this, wanted like this. His lips traced a path from my ear down my neck, each kiss sending shivers through my body. When he reached the sensitive spot where my neck met my shoulder, I couldn't suppress a soft sound of pleasure. "Shh," he murmured against my skin. "We don't want to shock poor Ella." The reminder of our audience only heightened the excitement. Here we were, two supposedly respectable seniors, sharing warmth in a fitting room, while my best friend browsed scarves 20 feet away. The absurdity and thrill of it made me feel more alive than I had in years. Albert's hands moved with skilled precision, finding places that made me arch against him, breath-catching. He knew exactly how to touch me, where to linger, when to be gentle, and when to be firm. It was like he'd been studying me, learning my responses, cataloging every preference. When his mouth moved lower, trailing kisses across my collarbone and down to the sensitive skin above my silhouette, I had to bite my lip to keep quiet. The combination of his warm lips and the cool air conditioning created a contrast that left me trembling. "You taste like sunshine," he whispered against my skin, and I almost laughed at the poetry of it. When was the last time anyone had described me as anything other than nice or pleasant? My hands explored his shoulders, his back, marveling at the firm muscle beneath weathered skin. He stayed active, I realized. Tennis, perhaps, or swimming. Whatever it was, I was grateful for it as I pressed closer, feeling the strength in his arms as they encircled me.